Good morning and welcome to the Daily Bible Reading for Thursday, February 10th. We are in Isaiah chapter 41 this morning and also Luke chapter 23. We are just a couple of chapters into the second half of the writing of Isaiah, which is a much more hopeful half. It is a half full of God at work and him being at work through the promises of the Messiah. We're going to see a great deal of that today. We're actually going to have the servant, God's servant, identified and brought into the picture here today in Isaiah 41. And then we are going to be moving towards the conclusion of the Gospel of Luke in chapter 23. Just have chapter 23 today, chapter 24 tomorrow, and then we'll be moving on to the book of Acts. But before we can get to Acts, let's get into our text in Isaiah and also finish up, get one chapter closer to finishing up our reading in Luke. But first up on the docket, Isaiah chapter 41. Isaiah chapter 41. This is another trial scene. We've seen that on a number of occasions recently in this writing here in Isaiah, where it is set up as if there is a trial or a court scene where there is a proposition put forth, and then evidence is having to be supplied in order to support the claim that has been put forth. And the claim here is that God is the one true living God. He is the powerful God. And the opponent in this court case is going to be the idols of the nations. We're going to see that being discussed today. And of course, the servant makes his introduction into the story here in Isaiah's second half. So let's read that together for today. Isaiah chapter 41, beginning in verse number 1. Be silent before me, coast and islands, and let peoples renew their strength. Let them approach, let them testify. Let's come together for the trial. Who has stirred someone up from the east? In righteousness he calls them to serve. The Lord hands nations over to him, and he subdues kings. He makes them like dust with his sword, like wind-driven stubble with his bow. He pursues them, going on safely, hardly touching the path with his feet. Who has performed and done this, calling the generations from the beginning? I am the Lord, the first, and with the last, I am he. The coasts and the islands see and are afraid. The whole earth trembles. They approach and arrive. Each one helps the other and says to another, take courage. The craftsman encourages the metal worker. The one who flattens with the hammer encourages the one who strikes the anvil, saying of the soldering, it is good. He fastens it with nails so that it will not fall over. So we might see here, we're beginning to look at the idols that are being made here in this section, bringing them to the forefront. And then we're going to contrast them with the reality of God. Verse number 8 of Isaiah 41, but you, Israel, my servant, Jacob, whom I have chosen, descendant of Abraham, my friend, I brought you from the ends of the earth and called you from the farthest corners. I said to you, you are my servants. I have chosen you. I haven't rejected you. Do not fear, for I am with you. Do not be afraid, for I am your God. I will strengthen you. I will help you. I will hold on to you with my righteous right hand. Be sure that all who are enraged against you will be ashamed and disgraced. Those who contend with you will become as nothing and will perish. You will look for those who contend with you, but you will not find them. Those who war against you will become absolutely nothing. For I am the Lord your God, who holds your right hand, who says to you, do not fear, I will help you. Do not fear, you worm Jacob, you men of Israel, I will help you. This is the Lord's declaration. Your Redeemer is the Holy One of Israel. See, I will make you into a sharp threshing board, new with many teeth. You will thresh mountains and pulverize them, and will make hills into chaff. You will winnow them, and a wind will carry them away. A whirlwind will scatter them, but you will rejoice in the Lord. You will boast in the Holy One of Israel. The poor and the needy seek water, but there is none. Their tongues are parched with thirst, but I will answer them. I am the Lord, the God of Israel. I will not abandon them. I will open rivers on the barren heights and springs in the middle of the plains. I will turn the desert into a pool and dry land into springs. I will plant cedars, acacias, myrtles and olive trees in the wilderness. I will put juniper trees, elms, and cypress trees together in the desert, so that all may see and know, consider and understand that the hand of the Lord has done this, and the Holy One of Israel has created it. Submit your case, says the Lord. Present your arguments, says Jacob's king. Let them come and tell us what will happen. Tell us the past events so that we may reflect on them and know the outcome, or tell us the future. Tell us the coming events. Then we will know that you are gods. Indeed, do something, good or bad. Then we will be in awe when we see it. But look, you are nothing, and your work is worthless. Anyone who chooses you is detestable. The Lord speaking now, I have stirred up one from the north, and he has come, one from the east who invokes my name. He will march over rulers as if they were mud, like a potter who treads the clay. Who told about this from the beginning, so that we might know, and from times past, so that we might say, he is right. No one announced it. No one told it. No one heard your words. I was the first to say in Zion, look, here they are. And I gave Jerusalem a herald with good news. Then I look, there is no one, and there is no counselor among them. Then I asked them, they say nothing. Look, all of them are a delusion. Their works are non-existent. Their images are wind and emptiness. Again, I hope we were able to identify the comparison that's being made here between Yahweh God, the God of heaven, the one true living and powerful God, and then the idols that were worshipped by Israel at various times, but specifically here, the idols of the nations. There's a lot of sarcasm that Isaiah introduces here into the text, which to me, that just shows the place that sarcasm has at times. And it's used as a literary device in the writing to really show the silliness of that which is being spoken of. Think about what's said in verse number 6 here, back at the beginning of the chapter, where the nations are addressed here. And he says in verse number 5, the coast and the islands see and are afraid. That's a symbolic of the nations. Then more specifically identified here, the whole earth trembles. They approach and arrive, and each one of them helps the other. They say, and they say to another, take courage. So we who are together in our idolatry and in our paganism, we need to take courage. Well, how are we going to take courage? Well, we're going to take courage by taking this metal. We're going to flatten it with a hammer, and then we're going to encourage the one who strikes the metal on the anvil, and then we're going to encourage the one who's doing the soldering, and we're going to say, this is good, this that we have created, this idol is good, but make sure before you set it up and before you leave it, make sure that you secure it, I should say. Make sure you secure it to the wall so that the idol doesn't fall over and look silly. They remind us of the story when the Philistines captured the Ark of the Covenants, and how the Ark in the pagan temple continued to knock over the idol that was there. And it is truly sarcasm, because there's no encouragement there. Why is there no encouragement there? Well, there's no encouragement there because of what he goes on to say here. And let me see if I can find it in my Bible real fast. Oh, let's see. All right, verse number 11. Verse number 11. Verse number 11. Verse number, be sure that all who are enraged against you will be ashamed and disgraced, that those who continue with you will become as nothing and will perish. You will look for those who continue with you, but you will not find them. Those who war against you will become absolutely nothing. That these nations that had at a time in the past been used as tools against Israel at the behest of God, they would no longer be able to use. So they would have no power within themselves. And let's see here. That's actually not what I was looking for. Let me see here. Verse 25, maybe. There we go. Verse 25. Verse 25, we go down here and we look at the one who has been stirred up at one point, and the nations that they said, or the idols that they say that they claim gave them the power. Look at verse 26. Who told you about this from the beginning? So that we may know from times past, so we might say he is right. what is it that these idols have the idols been the ones who have made these predictions about what God was going to do in and around his people in their punishment for their sins and in him raising up nations and tearing down nations? Did the idols tell of those things? Well, of course, the answer is no. And the answer is no because idols know nothing. Verse 28, idols know nothing. They can't say anything. And then the conclusion is verse 29, they are a delusion. Their works are not existent. Their images are wind and emptiness. They have no power. They have no power whatsoever. So in this particular trial, whenever the proposition is put forth that there is one God and his name is Yahweh, and these idols that you have served are nothing, whenever all the evidence is presented, that's shown to absolutely be the case, that these idols are nothing. And God is the one who has the power. He has the power to not only make these people, make this nation, of this small nation, into a great nation and bring them into a strong land and establish this covenant with them, but he's also able to bring up another nation to punish them whenever they rebel against him. But he's also able then to restore them to a power or to a place of prominence and to restore their fortune through his power. These idols can't do anything against him. Therefore, in the court of law, we might say, when we are considering the evidence, all the evidence, without a shadow of a doubt, points to Yahweh being the one true God, the one who makes all things happen. Therefore, they need to trust in him. That is Isaiah, a short synopsis of Isaiah 41. Trust in the Lord, because everything else is a delusion. Everything else is non-existent. Everything else is empty and without power. Isaiah 41. All right, let's shift our attention then to Luke 23. Again, we have Luke 23 today, and then tomorrow we will read Luke 24, and we'll be done with our reading through the Gospel of Luke. It's been good over the past 23 days to be doing this, and I do hope that it's been a blessing to you. It certainly has been to me as I've been able to read together with you over the past few days. Luke chapter 23 and verse number 1, reading from the Christian Standard Bible as has been our custom. Luke 23 and verse number 1, then their whole assembly. Remember, we are in the context here of Jesus having just been betrayed, and now he is on trial. A sham of the trial, but a quote-unquote trial nonetheless. Then their whole assembly rose up, and this is Luke 23 and verse 1, and brought him, being Jesus, before Pilate. And they began to accuse Jesus, saying, we found this man misleading our nation, opposing payment of taxes to Caesar, and saying that he himself is the Messiah, a king. So Pilate asked Jesus, are you the king of the Jews? And he answered him, you say so. Pilate then told the chief priests and the scribes and the crowds, I find no grounds for charging this man. But they kept insisting, he stirs up the people, teaching all throughout Judea, from Galilee, where he started, even to here. When Pilate heard this, he asked if the man was a Galilean. And finding that he was under Herod's jurisdiction, he sent him to Herod, who was also in Jerusalem during those days. Herod was very glad to see Jesus. For a long time, he had wanted to see him because he had heard about him and was hoping to see some miracle performed by him. So he kept asking Jesus questions, but Jesus did not answer him. The chief priests and the scribes stood vehemently accusing him. Then Herod, with his soldiers, treated him with contempt, mocked him, dressed him in bright clothing, and sent him back to Pilate. That very day, Herod and Pilate became friends. Previously, they had been enemies. Pilate called together the chief priests and the leaders of the people and said to them, you have brought me this man as one who misleads the people. But in fact, after examining him in your presence, I have found no grounds to charge this man with those things you accuse him of. Neither has Herod, because he has sent him back to us. Clearly, he has done nothing to deserve death. Therefore, I will have him whipped and then release him. Then they all cried out together, take this man away. Release Barabbas to us. He, being Barabbas, had been thrown into prison for a rebellion that had taken place in the city and for murder. Wanting to release Jesus, Pilate answered them again, but they kept shouting, crucify him, crucify him. And a third time he said to them, why? What has this man done? I have found no grounds for the death penalty. Therefore, I will have him whipped and then release him. But they kept up the pressure, demanding with loud voices that he be crucified, and their voices won out. So Pilate decided to grant their demand and release the one they were asking for, who had been thrown into prison for rebellion and murder. But he handed Jesus over to their will. As they led him away, they see Simon, a Cyrenian, who was coming in from the country, and laid the cross on him to carry behind Jesus. A large crowd of people followed him, including women who were mourning and lamenting him. But turning to them, Jesus said, "Daughters of Jerusalem, do not weep for me, but weep for yourselves and for your children. Look, the days are coming when they will say, 'Blessed are the women without children, and wombs that never bore, and the breasts that never nursed.' Then they will begin to say to the mountains, 'Fall on us,' and to the hills, 'Cover us.' For if they do these things when the wood is green, what will happen when it is dry?" Two others, they were criminals, were also led away to be executed with Jesus. When they arrived at the place called the Skull, they crucified him there, along with the criminals, one on the right and one on the left. Then Jesus said, Father, forgive them, because they do not know what they are doing." And they divided his clothes and cast lots. The people stood watching, and even the leaders were scoffing. "He saved others. Let him save himself if this is God's Messiah, the chosen one." The soldiers also mocked him. They came offering him sour wine and said, "If you are the king of the Jews, save yourself." And inscription was above him, "This is the king of the Jews." Then one of the criminals hanging there began to yell insults at Jesus. "Aren't you the Messiah? Save yourself and us." But the other answered, rebuking him, "Don't you even fear God, since you are undergoing the same punishment? We are punished justly, because we're getting back what we deserve for the things we did. But this man has done nothing wrong." Then he said, "Jesus, remember me when you come into your kingdom." And Jesus said to him, "Truly I tell you, today you will be with me in paradise." It was about noon. Excuse me, it was about noon. And the darkness came over the whole land until 3, because the sun's light failed. The curtain of the sanctuary was split down the middle. And Jesus called out with a loud voice, "Father, into your hands I entrust my spirit." Saying this, he breathed his last. When the centurion saw what happened, he began to glorify God, saying, "This man really was righteous." And all the crowds that had gathered for this spectacle, when they saw what had taken place, went home, striking their chest. But all who knew him, including the women who had followed him from Galilee, stood at a distance watching these things. There was a good and righteous man named Joseph, a member of the Sanhedrin, who had not agreed with their plan and action. He was from Arimathea, a Judean town, and was looking forward to the kingdom of God. He approached Pilate and asked for Jesus' body. Taking it down, he wrapped it in fine linen and placed it in a tomb cut into the rock where no one had ever been placed. It was the preparation day, and the Sabbath was about to begin. The women who had come with him from Galilee followed along and observed the tomb and how his body was placed. Then they returned and prepared spices and perfumes. They rested on the Sabbath according to the commandment. Certainly is a, a tough reading here in Luke chapter 23. And it's a tough reading, not just because of the reality of what happened, but it's a tough reading because of kind of the background with all of it. What we're able to know about what's really taking place here in Luke 23. Justice was not served in the most simple sense. And we see that from the perspective of those who were being hung with Jesus. The one the one criminal rightly acknowledged that, we're here because we deserve to be here. But that guy, he's not done anything wrong. He doesn't deserve to be killed. And yet there was Jesus. He was there being crucified with two criminals. And the reason was because people have believed a lie. And they perpetrated a lie. This lie that he was trying to basically begin and instigate a takeover of Caesar. I mean, one of the quickest ways to really get the Romans against you is to try to say that you're a king. And of course, Jesus did recognize that he was a king, but he wasn't coming for an earthly kingdom, but he was coming to establish a spiritual one. And so they took that reality and they twisted it and used it against them. They lied. They misrepresented the truth. And so many people continue to do that today concerning Jesus, misrepresent Jesus. They misrepresent who he was and what he came to do. They misrepresent what he wants us to do. And therefore, I want us to take away today the necessity for us to reject untruths, to reject falsehoods concerning Jesus, whether it be about his identity, whether it be about what he taught, whether it be about what he expects out of us as people. Let's reject everything that is false concerning Jesus and only seek to serve him in every way that he asks us to. And to do so honestly, because we've noted before, that's why this is happening the way it is, because people are not honest. They had hard, rebellious hearts. They were not willing to truly consider evidence and what Jesus was saying. And for that, this took place. Now, granted, this was all according to God's will. This was meant to take place according to God's will, but nonetheless, it doesn't negate the fact that this was a sham. This was an absolute sham of a trial. That what Jesus is going through here was not something that he deserved in any way, shape, or form. He did not deserve this punishment, and yet he willingly went through such for us. And for that, we should be thankful. And as a result, again, let's do as I mentioned. Let us not allow untruths or falsehoods about Jesus to be perpetrated within our lives. Let us see Jesus for who he is, what he taught, and what he expects of us. And let's be good followers of him this day, and of course, every day moving forward, as long as we have breath. So appreciate you tuning in today for our reading in Isaiah 41 and also Luke 23. Tomorrow, on Friday, February 11th, we will be concluding our reading in Luke, and then continuing our reading in Isaiah will be in Isaiah 42 and Luke chapter 24. I hope that you will join us for those readings as well. If you have any questions or comments, as always, you're more than welcome to leave those in the comment section, either on the Facebook page or on the YouTube channel. Love to interact with you in that way if you so desire. And if you're looking for any further information on our church family in Loudon, check us out on our website, loudoncoc.org. Again, that is Loudon, LOUDONCOC.org. If my mom was watching this, she's hearing me spelling and she probably just held her breath because she knows I'm not that great of a speller. But loudoncoc.org, check us out. If you have any questions or comments, you can send us a message through that website as well. Thanks again for tuning in, though. Have a great rest of your day. And we'll see you tomorrow morning for another reading in God's Word. Take care and God bless.